You see, something is going to happen. Something wonderful.
My God, it's full of stars.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the NY Patriot Show. Today I'm very lucky to have Colby jumping on with me again from Conspiracy PlayTime. He's jumping in the passenger seat and keeping me company for this guest. And I also have Brandon from the oh man, I already screwed it up. I was thinking Agora. I think I was thinking something else. Agora Podcast. Man, I'm sorry.
That's a good recovery.
Yeah, that is, and he is one of the two gentlemen that do that show. His co-host Brian is not with him. It is just him. Colby, if you would like, in case there is new listeners who don't know who you are, would you like to introduce yourself and let people know about your show as well?
Yeah, I'm Colby. You can find my conspiracy show, conspiracyplaytime.com, for the video format. That'll just take you anywhere where it hasn't been removed, such as YouTube. And then it's also everywhere audio. I have Disinfobation, also a weekly shit-talking show that's everywhere but Apple and YouTube. So
awesome. Thank you very much. And the links will be in the bottom as well. And now to the guest. Brandon, would you like to... I guess maybe give a little introduction about who you are and your show, and then we can get into the topic.
Yeah, sure. So I came up with the idea of the Agora because I was thinking a lot of times in politics we don't discuss both sides. So I kind of want to create a format where I personally am like libertarian centrist perspective, and I love debating the hypocrisy on both sides or hitting a controversy topic and getting a more hashing out session as opposed to just solely like, oh, you're this side, you're that side, and we, part ways and everybody just gives each other the middle finger. I don't like that mentality. I think the Agora in the Greek culture, it was circular formed. It's where everybody was facing each other and we'd actually have a discussion about the arts, about politics. And like, it was so much of a thing back in the day that if you did not go, they would beat you in the street. So that's kind of the mentality that I had with my buddy. I've said I really want to do a podcast at some point. So he's been kind of hosting us in his basement. And we've just been hitting some topics. It's just kind of what's ever in the news, kind of just something of like, let's hit this one because I want to see what we can get for reactions. Nice. So, yeah, it's pretty much what I updated it with the Awakening Agora podcast because somebody already had the Agora and I didn't want to get some kind of trademark thing going on. But Awakening is kind of what I wanted to do with this format, is just awaken people that you can have a discussion without freaking, clawing somebody's eyes out.
Very well said. Yeah, I was going to call it, because I guess magic, I had egregore stuck in my head. And that's what I almost came out and said, the Egregore Podcast. That's why I had to catch myself. I was like,
original.
Yeah. I mean, it's not a bad name either. All the links
on you.
All the links and everything that you have, I will also include in the bottom. I did also just want to mention as well, for new people, I have had Colby on before, and I would highly suggest to go check out his stuff, the shows that he's been on with the Occult Rejects and the NY Patriot Show. And by the time this comes out, if you haven't yet heard of him, check out on the Occult Rejects, the stuff on Elon Musk should be out by then as well, which is a show that Colby did and presented himself. So definitely check that out if you have just come across him for the first time this episode.
Well, thank you, sir.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, you've been on a bunch, so I'm going to have people go check that shit out. So, Brendan, the topic, the origin of the Democratic Party.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
So a lot of it, I'm probably going to be starting with just like a 2-page read. Mm-hmm. It actually goes back to President Jackson. And that's something, because I've always been asking my buddy, I'm like, there's stuff in history we don't really talk about too much. Like when two people were running for president, the loser would become vice president. When did that change? That's that's kind of topics I'm like.
So even if you lost, you still made out, kind of.
Right, but it's kind of like
it's like, even if I lose, I get a paycheck.
Yeah, exactly. But I kind of like that because somebody like myself, I'm from Connecticut. So it's like either way I'm screwed because only the Democrats are going to be represented. Anybody who's a Republican, Libertarian, or anything else, those representatives don't go up there and represent the people. So in that sense, I think it's incredibly flawed, but that's me. So I'm going to read this part, and then we'll go into a little bit more of the exploration of it. So it's called Old Hickory. It's from the book More Shock and Secrets of American History by Bill Coty. You can find it on Amazon for like $22. Sometimes Barnes & Noble has it. It says, Andrew Jackson is remembered for a number of things, but timidity is not one of them. He was never reluctant to express his political views, and he invited the nation to share his opinions with complete abandon, especially when he became president. After the common man placed Jackson in the White House in 1828, his stubbornness put such a strain on the newly organized Democratic Party that it carries his mark to this very day. Jackson had always been forceful personality. In his early days, with his little education, he pushed himself into becoming a judge and a member of Congress. He was indomitable head of the Tennessee militia, and his men repaid his unwavering leadership by giving him the nickname Old Hickory. It was after he went to Washington, however, that Jackson's certitude emerged and its more I can't pronounce that word. He openly defied an edict of the United States Supreme Court and threatened to hang his former vice president, John C. Calhoun. He relentlessly assailed the Bank of the United States and almost invaded the state of South Carolina because its leaders resisted its tariff policies. It was, however, the beautiful wife of his Secretary of War who caused Jackson to exhibit such uncompromising tenacity that his political enemies began to liken him to a certain barnyard animal. Peggy O'Neill was the attractive daughter of the Washington boarding housekeeper who was linked romantically with some of her family male's guests. With Secretary John Eaton began to court Peggy and subsequently married her, the scandal rocked the Capitol. The blue-blooded views of the rest of the Jackson's cabinet entered into a compact in which they snubbed the new Mrs. Eaton. Privately, Jackson was encouraged to ask Eaton's resignation. When the president refused, the issue went public. The more Peggy Eaton was vilified, the more staunchly the President Jackson defended her, and the more public became involved, and the more intractable Old Hickory became. The Donnybrook arrived when Jackson gave his cabinet an ultimatum. They could either convince their wives to accept Mrs. Eaton, or they could resign their offices. Faced with such an ultimatum, only Eaton and Secretary of State Martin Van Buren remained. The eternal White House debate over Eaton affair played right into the hands of Jackson's opponents in the election of 1832. They began to caricature of the president and his followers in the campaign of being the intelligent sorts, or lack thereof, of the donkey and the Democratic Party that we have today.
Wow.
Again, I'm always asking myself those questions that people don't ask. Where did the elephant come from? Where did the donkey come from? Where did the porcupine come from? Like, we need to start asking ourselves these questions because we just get caught up into the cult and the pictures and the pretty paints that we got going on. I've been to some of the Turning Point USA events, and sometimes I'm scratching my head. I'm like, you guys, it's like a cult. Some people are awake, and there's other parts where I'm like, do you hear what they just said? Like, literally, you could have ended that with a Zeke Heil, and it would have sounded great. Just saying.
Yo, that is a good, I mean, yeah, I've even wondered that myself, too. I'm like, why did you pick, like, specific things, like the elephant and the donkey, and, like, you know, I sometimes, you know, I think it's just like, this is probably part of just unfortunately, it's part of our brain. Like, when you don't understand something, sometimes your brain will just, like, need to brush things off or almost make up a lie or an excuse. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of times when it comes to artwork, people just think is weird. They just brush it off as like, oh, it doesn't mean much. It's just weird. It's like, no, you don't want to try to fucking figure it out. That's what it is. So your brain doesn't understand.
I know I'm in the right company for this, but it's like a lot of the symbolism. I go into the origins. Where did this come from? And then I look into the mythology. Where did this come from? I do compare, contrast. What's the equivalent? And a lot of people are just going to, like, especially when I go after the Catholic Church. Oh, boy, do I get the hate comments on that one. I'm just saying, I'm asking where the symbolism, the etymology of the word phrase came from. And this is what I've come to through critical thinking on my own and researching, and I'll cite my sources often, and people are still in denial of it.
No, I have offered, like, even just the whole word itself. Like, you know, and I was even going to say, I know you have covered the Republican Party, so I'll probably have you back on to cover this, but, like, I have thought about both parties, like, literally, like, pulling the word apart and trying to understand, like, you know, what does this word actually mean? Like, what is it referring back to? Like, I even think like if you understood occultism and understood those words and the letters being used, it's all kind of telling you something, I think. You know?
Well, even when you hear culture war, take the first 4 letters of that. What do you get? Cult.
Yeah, culture, cult, one and the same.
I mean, even as silly as this sounds, and this is something that popped into my head a few days ago. It could have just been a stoned moment. But I was like, the word influence and influenza is so fucking close to each other.
I never even thought of that.
I did that exactly on another podcast.
I was like, that's only like 2 or 3 letters off, but the same fucking root and everything.
Wow.
Yep.
I was like, yo, there's a reason for that, though, I'm sure.
Yep. Well, it's like even the word soldier, first 4 letters, sold.
Yeah.
Again, when you ask yourself, what are you selling yourself to? An ideology, a government, an individual that's, someone who wears a crown? When you look into the origin of words, I was on another podcast and the guy was telling me, he's like, think of the days of the week and stuff like that. Like the very phrase, days in the week. You're in a daze. You say good morning. You're happy to be in a state of mourning. Week.
Yeah.
You think about it the whole week. You're just weak. You can't do this. And I'm like, you know what? You're right.
Or weekend is like to be weakened. Weekend.
Yes. Or even blessing. Be less.
Wow.
When you start taking apart some of these words, you're like, wait a minute. Is this like a spell? Does this like subtly break us down in a mental state that we don't even realize? Like, bless you.
The English
you want me to be
language,
less of myself?
the English language is kind of designed for that. And I got into a talk with a dude this last weekend, and he was like, people make such a big deal out of like phonetic correlations. And I'm like, well, there's a reason for that. When you start looking into it really heavily, you'll come up with all sorts of shit that can't be coincidental.
Right. Well, we started that whole rant with the word religion. And originally that comes from rely on and jinn, which is the Middle Eastern version for demonic spirits. I did a post on this on like genies and stuff like that. So religion, what does that mean? Rely on dark spirits. So me, I'm a Christian. So I'll come from that from the perspective. I'm like, so you're telling me denominationalist. I'm anti-denominationalist. I'm anti-party. So I get a lot of hate from both sides because they don't know how to hit me.
Yeah, not belonging to somebody's group. Yeah, it's enough to fuck. We were just talking about this before you came on about if you're not in my group, then fuck you. I don't want anything to do with you. You don't deserve to associate with anybody I know.
Yeah, it gets hard for them. I mean, that's what I was going on with the comments when I mentioned that earlier, is that they don't know how to hit you because they just automatically assume you're the other side of what they are. And I'm just like, no. If anything, Christ was against religion himself. He constantly was bashing it. Every time he made a cameo in a temple, they kicked him out.
He was an activist.
That tells you everything you need to know there. But yeah, so a lot of this stuff with the Democratic Party, like I mentioned earlier, with the Knights of the Golden Circle, that connects a lot to the occult. And it originally,
I've never even heard of that.
You never heard of it?
No.
Wow. And again, this is stuff where I'm like, if we knew about this in history, if Rockefeller didn't taint it, this is pretty potent stuff.
Well, I think I even remember when I spoke to you about coming on for the show, you had even messaged me a few things. I was like, I've never heard of any of this. I was like, it sounds great.
You out-occulted the cult guy.
Yeah, really.
The occult guy has been out-occulted.
Yeah.
Out-occulted.
Yeah. Like, I've never even heard of this shit. Awesome.
Well, I'm related to Albert Pike.
Are you? Oh,
I kid you not. He's a distant cousin, as well as the guy for Pikes Peak, Colorado, Zebulon Montgomery Pike. He's another Mason. He was working as a double agent. Again, this is not confirmed, but I've done enough reading where I'm like, it's confirmed. So basically, he was sent under Colonel Wilkinson to go out. So when Lewis and Clark were taking the northern part, he took the midway to Colorado, and he was going on a dual mission to try to recruit Mexico to split the Union under Aaron Burr, because he wanted to get Mexico's aid as an ally. And while he claimed, I don't speak any Spanish, he was actually fluent in French, Spanish, and English. So when they met up with the group and they were brought all the way down to Mexico City, he was going on a dual mission to try to get them as an ally for Aaron Burr. Again, don't talk about this in history. So this, again, spawns off later on around the time of the Haiti Rebellion. I think this was, I can't give an exact date, but if you Google it, you can find it. It's 18-something. and the South saw basically all these black slaves just slaughtered all the white people on the island and gained their independence from France. The South was like, oh crap, we can't have that down here. That would be really bad. So they started creating a little bit of an ideology as like, what if we were able to create a cutoff route where like we weren't connected to the freaking North. We could still do business with them, but we could have our own little empire that still held the attributes of slavery. And so what the empire, the Golden Circle was supposed to encompass was the Dominican Republic, Jamaica, all those places, the entire South up to California, Mexico, a little dash into some of the Mexican states below that. And then it was supposed to also take on Cuba.
You know what I really find
Golden Circle.
I find interesting that you're saying these parts of the Golden Circle. Just from my own experience from going to some of those countries myself for vacation,
Mm-hmm.
those, like, I hate to say, like, it is almost, in a way, still almost slavery there for those people.
Oh, for sure.
Because, like, honestly, it's like even when I've been to DR, the people working there had even told me, like, that job was like a gift from God for them. Some of them even stayed there. So, like, literally, it's like you're doing good, you're doing well because you're serving probably for the most part, I hate to say, white rich motherfuckers still.
Well, cruise ships are a great example of this. They'll go from like port to port where the people, I've never been on a cruise, but I've heard people talk about it. And they say that once you step off the boat, you're just bombarded with people trying to sell you shit and trying to get a little bit of your money because they know. And you're kind of an asshole if you don't spend a little bit on them, I guess. But I you know, it's, to me, I've never felt like a cruise sounded appealing. And after I heard that, I was like, no.
That's happened to me on
Not for me.
excursions in Dominican Republic. I went out to DR once and we went on an excursion. They took us somewhere. As soon as you got off the bus, before you even got to what you were doing, you were getting fucking hammered with people trying to sell you stuff. And then there was kids there asking for money. And the person I was with, I'm sure they're being truthful. I don't think they would have made it up. They told me that, like, at some point they even heard the guy who was driving the bus tell the kids, same time tomorrow.
Yeah.
So, like, now that's like,
Wow. And it's true because after the South lost, they actually, a lot of them went to Brazil. Again, same thing with the Nazis. They went to Brazil and they were known as the Confederados. And they were the original white people that you were seeing down there. And because Brazil didn't ban it, I think it was till 1870s, 1880s, slavery. So why are you still hating on America? We kind of ended it before that. And we're the only nation in the entire world that went to war over slavery. Only one. Just saying. I mean, you even listen to the battle hymn of the Republic of the North. It says, as he died to make men holy, let us die to make men free.
So
that sounds like a real racist country.
Let me ask you something about the Civil War, because it sounds like you're pretty schooled in history,
It's
more
my
so
favorite.
than mine. Okay, so
Also
let me
me.
ask you this. Is it true that slavery became the focal point because it was a convenient way to separate the South and condemn them? Or is it more that it really was fought over that? Because I just hear such conflicting ideas about that.
That's something where there's some lady I was following, and she was trying to refer to Lincoln as the bad guy of the whole Civil War, because she gives one quote out of context where he said, if I could end the Civil War without ending slavery, I would do so. And she's like, referring to some guy that wrote like 3-4 books bashing Lincoln for the whole thing. And I'm trying to give context to the Knights of the Golden Circle. I'm giving context of a book that was written, Rome's Responsibility for the Assassination of Abraham Lincoln. This was written in 1885 by a guy that was a lead investigator of this whole thing. And he incorporates, the guy who compiled is Edward Hendry. He incorporates Father Chineke having a discussion with Lincoln prior. He pissed off the Jesuits back in 1830s, 40s. And he said, they're going to come and get you. He says, I have no doubt that they will. In 1863, he gave a quote saying, if the American people knew that the Catholics were ruining our education system, there would be like a full-scale war. And this is the reason why he didn't tell the American public that that he suspected that a lot of the South was being influenced by the papacy, is because he said this will turn into a religious war over a civil war, and that's going to be 1,000 times worse than what we already have right now. Because the minute the Pope gave the declaration that the South is its own country, or he gave it his thumbs up of approval, that is when the draft riots occurred that you see in the movie with what's his face, Leonardo DiCaprio, and the guy that played Lincoln later on with the big mustache, played the butcher in the movie, Gangs of New York. That was the stuff that led up to it, is that a lot of them were pro-Catholic. And the minute the Pope said, yeah, the South's good, they're like, I'm not fighting my fellow Catholics down there. So to give context, sorry, to what you were saying, yes, it was fought over states' rights. But I think a lot of people are missing context, is that for the South, it was an economic artery. To lose that, they were literally losing a lot of their backing, as it were. And if they did not have that financial support, they were kind of freaking out of how they could, sustain themselves without this, free labor force, basically. But even the founding fathers, and you can get this in the book by David Barton, American History in Black and White. This is probably a book I'm going to be quoting from a little later. He gives a lot of context of what was going on before and what went on afterwards. For the first 10 years after the Civil War, a lot of pro-policies for slavery and like marriage. There were several doctors, black doctors and senators that went up there, and they were debating a lot of the Democrats in Congress, and they called them out for it. They called them right out on it, and they're constantly praising the Republican Party, saying they're the ones that have been fighting for us, not you guys. Sorry, did I answer your question?
Yeah,
I think you did.
I mean, I think it's very nuanced. You can never give like a precise answer. But what do you think about Lincoln being called a racist by some of his, because is it true that he wanted Liberia? Like he wanted a place to send slaves, and he was he was into separation, or not? That's not the right word.
Not separation. He was open to the idea of basically offering. After what we did to you guys, we're going to offer you a chance to go back.
So that's taken out of context then.
It is. And the reason I can back that up is that when you look into the Freeman's Bank, this was a bank that was established by Lincoln and Frederick Douglass. And the idea was to have a bank that was just solely for black people, because he knew there'd be a lot of segregation going on, is that it'd be just solely for them so that they could have a chance to get up economically back on their feet. And of course, only white people board, only white people were in charge. Of course, it crashed within a couple of years. I think it was 1871, 72. They purposely made it crash, and then, the blacks got screwed since then. But again, that was based in America. So when you're looking at that, you're like, okay, so you're already setting up the groundwork for them to actually have a chance to do something in America, but also offer them a chance. If you want to go back to your own country, that's on us. We're sorry for what we did. That's incredible for anybody that wants to call him racist. And there's a couple stories. When I was a kid, I was reading in a book. He was going to town with his dad. He had a crappy upbringing. He literally was living out in a couple low degree weathers in like a lean-to with his family at one point. It was one of the coldest winters of the world. Nobody's talking about that. And like, he had a crap upbringing. And he was going to town one time with his dad, and he saw a black guy pulling a cart like an ox. And that was one thing that stuck him. He's like, why are they treating that guy like an animal? And then a second story is later on during his riverboat days, he saw an auction going on in Louisiana. And he's like, guys, I can't stand around for this. This is, I can't tolerate this anymore. So he ended up leaving the whole area because that was annoying him just watching this going on. He didn't like the idea that another man was being sold like a stock. Downside to all that is that his wife's family did own slaves. So there's a little controversy there, but again, you can't always control the in-laws.
Yeah, she was so fucking hot, and he wasn't going to do any better, so her family had slaves. Oh, fucking wow.
She was horrible, dude. Totally horrible.
Was she?
Oh, he basically dumped her because he was still in love with this lady. Anne Rutledge died way younger. Lincoln almost committed suicide. They took a pocket knife away from him and stuff like that. It was bad, dude.
Whoa, and she was crazy bitch.
Oh, no. He didn't commit suicide for her. It was for the former love.
Okay, the former
one. He met her, and then he's like, I can't do this. So he ends up going out to Kentucky, Tennessee with his former buddy. Goes out there, and he comes back after a year, and he apologizes, like, I'm sorry I ran out on you. And this lady comes and talks to him, says, you guys should court again. And so he's like, all right, I guess I could, like, marry you again. She's like, no, you're doing it today. It's her birthday. She's like, no, you're marrying me today. I'm not taking a chance on this. So the story is it's at the house where they were staying. She's downstairs. She's getting all prepped up in the kitchen. And this kid in the house comes upstairs, and Lincoln's polishing his shoe, kind of staring like out the window. And he's like, "Where are you going?" And Lincoln goes, "To hell, I suppose."
He knew.
Oh, he knew.
Wow.
He knew.
And he was a romantic. I didn't know this about Lincoln.
Oh, yes. Dude, like on their honeymoon, like I read this book that was written in the 1930s, so it's closer to the source and interviews that the guy got. Says that on their honeymoon, they got in a fight around the breakfast table, and Mrs. Lincoln took her coffee and poured it right in his face.
Oh, wow.
Bitch.
I was like, guys, this guy wasn't just dealing with a civil war. He had one going on at home.
Fuck, sounds like it.
Dude, yeah. But anyways, back to the Knights of the Golden Circle. So yeah, this group started forming after that incident, and they put up a patsy. So the guy, if you look it up or you read the book, they'll explain that they put up a patsy front like they kind of do now, that this is the guy who's in charge of the organization. But you look at the names and stuff like that, it was some other individual. But that's not primarily important. So he starts promoting it, starts trying to get recruits, and they start mainly focusing in Texas. They were incredibly anti-Native American. As one guy on his whatever it was for taxes, he put as his job description that he was an Indian killer. To give you a little context of what these people said, their
It's a
declaration,
hell of a resume.
right? Their declaration literally stated that this is a pro-institution that God ordained with slavery, yada, yada, yada. You can find that in the book, Knights of the Golden Circle, on Amazon. I think it's like $35, of course. And so Texas, all the way up to Kansas, where they made the deal eventually later on that it could be a pro-slavery state. This is something that I've connected some dots here, is that you've heard of John Brown at least, right?
No.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah, sorry.
Oh, goodness. Okay, so
Oh,
Cool us, young lad.
John Brown. All right. Fun guy to know. You could get a movie on this with Ronald Reagan and Errol Flynn from 1940.
I've never watched a Ronald Reagan movie. This will be my first. Nice.
It's worth it.
So he plays John Brown?
A lot of it. Huh?
He plays John Brown in the movie, Reagan does?
No.
Oh, okay.
They get another creepy ass looking guy to do it, but he does a very good job. Of course, they villainize him, but if you understand the Knights of the Golden Circle, I've kind of connected some dots, because John Brown basically was a pro abolitionist. He didn't like the idea that all these, black people were being oppressed. He didn't like the idea that this law was passed. And so what he started doing was going full on vigilante abolitionist. First thing he did is that he rode to this guy's house, pulled him out, and freaking beat him to death with swords with his sons.
Oh, man.
So again, everybody's going to be like, why did you do this? So again, this is speculative, but Knights of the Golden Circle had range from Texas up into Kansas, and they were incredibly pro-slavery, and they were not against using violence or writing out and saying a false story that the Comanches did a raid and then wiping out an entire village. So if this is what his motive was, he knew that there was a lodge nearby, and this is why he was going on the warpath of basically, stopping the guys that have the secret organization. The hit makes sense to me. Are we going to hear about that in history books? No. But does it make sense in context of what was going on around the same time? Personally, I would say yes. So John Brown, eventually he gained a lot of traction. The blacks were loving him, and he decided to pull a rogue move. And this is in the movie. Again, it's fantasized here and there to make it for action film, so it's like a Western. And he goes up to Virginia at Harper's Ferry. And he seizes this. This is Harper's Ferry was a ammunitions place where they had a lot of rifles, gunpowder, bullets. And he was going to take that and then start an insurrection through the South by arming the slaves. Again, this is anti what the Knights of the Golden Circle's purpose was. This is the stuff they were freaked out about. So when I'm putting the two scenarios together, I'm like, okay, you want to do exactly the thing that this organization does not want to have happen for them to gain their independence and liberty. So trivia fact with John Brown, John Wilkes Booth actually met him. And he was in Virginia, and they're hearing that Harper's Ferry is about to get whacked. So that all went down. And so then there's a rumor that they're going to be having like 100 and something guys are going to come release John Brown. We need to gather the Virginia militia, and everybody needs to go out there. So Booth, on the spur of the moment, he joins. He doesn't have a uniform. He's not even part of the whole group. He's like, I'll buy a uniform when I get there. I want to be part of this. I do not like abolitionists. gets on there. He meets John Brown in his cell, and he was a witness there when he was being hung. And he said to the guy next to him, says, "If I ever go down, I'm not going down like that. That's just no." And he actually respected him. Even though he hated abolitionists, he respected John Brown for having such courage to stand up for this kind of stuff. But trivia fact, John Wilkes Booth was a member of the Knights of the Golden Circle later on. Yeah. And so was Governor Sam Houston. And was Albert Pike. And Albert Pike later on formed the KKK.
So
right? So when you're connecting these dots, you're like, oh, wait a minute.
Well, I was going to, even before you mentioned the KKK, and that just adds more to it. I mean, do you think there's occultism now behind this stuff? Too, in a sense?
There was occultism in the beginning. There was occultism in the origins. The book that Rome's responsibility for the assassination of Abraham Lincoln. I compared that with another book because people were getting all cranky and stuff like that. So it's the Montreal City of Secrets is another book. They kind of screwed the guy over. He only needed like 120 pages. You skim through a couple of them because a lot of the paragraphs end up repeating itself. So whoever his editor was screwed him over royally. So you could just kind of skim through the rest of the 40 other pages. But 120, 110, you get kind of the gist of what the Secret Service was. And the guy in Montreal, so the guy I was describing it is kind of like the Casablanca of the North. Everybody knew that it was pro-Confederacy. Everybody knew that this was a hub for the Confederacy, and nobody was doing crap about it. And the Secret Service was located up there for the Confederacy. And the guy that was in charge of introductions, letters of introductions to Robert E. Lee was P.C. Martin, Captain P.C. Martin. And you can get his pictures. I have posts on this. I'll probably repost it soon because I was getting requests. And P.C. Martin, prior to the Civil War, he sold Catholic Bibles. Now, you look up a picture of the Knights of the Golden Circle in Texas. They're all sitting there, all in their little royal thing, hands in their little jackets and whatnot. And they have a guy wearing like a little papacy hat with a little cross on it. It's like, okay, I'm seeing a Masonic and Jesuit connection here. Very interesting. So this P.C. Martin guy, I was reading in another book, the guy's like, oh, it's probably not true, yada, yada, yada. Can't really put it on this, but I'm like, I'm delving into P.C. Martin. I'm finding more and more in his background. I'm like, this is the guy that introduced Booth to Sarah Surratt. She was part of the conspiracy. Nobody talks about her. She was known as the Veiled Lady. She was seen at the Booth boarding house several times. She is also suspected to be a lover of both John Wilkes Booth and his other co-conspirator, John Surratt.
They were all just fucking each other.
Oh, dude, it was a crazy group.
It sounds like it. Sounds like those fuckers at FTX. They're all just fucking and trying to like fucking.
Dude, it's never changed. It's never changed. John Surratt, you can actually Google this right now. You can find him in full regalia in a Vatican uniform. Part of the Papacy Guard. You can Google it. It's right there. And after the whole crap went down, he went back up to Montreal. He met, I think it was Potterfield. Guy's name was Potterfield. Met him. Guy gave him some papers. And where did he hide? For 5 months with 2 Jesuit priests at St. Paul in Montreal, Canada. After which he gets on the Peruvian, a steamer, and goes up to Liverpool. Now, there's another book I've read. Liverpool was the port in England where they were making all the blockade runners for the South. And they were incredibly pro-South. The Catholics there actually were the guy who was building all this stuff. They were the ones saying like, yeah, keep supporting this guy. This is great. I'm like, interesting. So out of all the ports you go to in all the world, this is the one you go to. So somebody finds him there, or he messaged a friend, and this friend basically calls America and is like, listen, he's located at this ministry place. Do you want us to pick him up? Do you want us to apprehend him? There's 100,000 bounties still on his head. There's a goof up. President Johnson revokes the reward. The charge of Secretary of War, Edward Stanton, fumbles up the message, and he escapes again. Where does he go? He goes to a little town outside of the Vatican and joins the Papal Guard, and that's where the photo was taken. Another citizen ended up tracing him. He joins the Papal Guard, too, to kind of find out where he is. Makes a citizen's arrest. Papacy's like, okay, crap, we got to hand you over. We tried our best. He escapes again. Runs to Cairo, Egypt. They finally arrest him. They apprehend him. They extradite him back to the United States. He goes on trial. Every single one of the jurors was Catholic. Gets off. He goes on tour for the rest of his life, talking about his, connection to the whole thing, yada, yada. When he dies, he's buried with full Catholic royal ceremonies, only reserved for people who did great acts for the Catholic Church.
No shit.
I'm like, wow, that is interesting. What did you do, Mr. Son of a Shoe Clerk, that was so significant for the cause of the Catholic Church? All the countries in Europe sent their condolences, not the Vatican. So this guy makes a pretty strong case. And the guy who backstabbed Lincoln, so in 1863, there was a cotton for contraband deal going on, where Lincoln actually signed this to make a deal with the South and meeting in Montreal on neutral ground, saying, we will give you arms, ammunition, we'll give you supplies if you give us cotton, because our northern businesses have been suffering through the war, and we kind of can't, get enough from overseas because you keep sinking our ships. So this deal's going on. Now remember, this is right before, actually 1864, sorry, not 63, 64, September, October. And so this deal's going on. At the same time, Edwin Stanton is sending his brother-in-law and his chief of spies up into Montreal, Canada. At the same time, his Secretary of State, the guy that bought Alaska, drawing a blank.
Not going to get any help from me.
He got stabbed on the night of the assassination. I'm drawing a blank.
I know who you're talking about.
Yeah.
I saw this documentary that talked about that. I don't know his name, though.
Anyways, people have figured it out. You gave enough description. So he was sending up emissaries to try to figure out ways to negotiate the end of the Civil War. And again, right before an election year, so much scandal going on. It's like Game of Thrones. Everybody's sending their little pawns. But here's the kicker. At the hotel where Edwin Stanton sent his brother-in-law, he signed his name directly after Sarah Surratt on the checkboard and the logging in. It's still there. You can get it at the museum in the Montreal Museum. And it's like, either one, you're profoundly stupid at a time of war as the guy who's the National Chief of Police of the United States to be signing your own name in a ledger right under a known spy. Or two, you're collaborating with the enemy. I'm leaning on the collaborating with the enemy. It was way too convenient. So yeah, Edwin Stanton basically backstabbed Lincoln as a Secretary of War, and he was a Rothschild agent. People are like, again, when people are going after Lincoln, I'm like, he was going against the establishment before it was cool. He actually was making moves. When they were saying we need money to finance this war, he says, we're not borrowing from Britain, or I'm not going to put our country into debt. I'm going to create the Greenback program where we're going to fix this on our own way. So who was betting against this? J.P. Morgan was in Montreal. J.D. Rockefeller was in Montreal. When people
now,
start
once
connecting,
again, I always hear people talking shit about the greenbacks too.
Yes, I have.
You know what I'm saying? It's like everybody's villainizing Lincoln any way they can. So that's interesting to hear from you.
He was pulling the Rand Paul basically before it was cool. Like, we need to have our own economy. We can't get into debt with other countries. Like, he was seeing through the ploys that they were doing. And Edwin Stanton, his chief, I'm forgetting the guy's name, but his chief spy, he was up there, and he was the one that had Booth's diary after Booth was assassinated. He basically was the first person to have possession of it, and some other general guy. The general guy ended up dying, or it was Major something. He ended up dying. And the other, the spy, died of arsenic poisoning.
Oh, wow.
When they had Booth's diary, 19 pages were missing. When finally Stanton decided to hand it over, even though the court was like, you got to give this to me. He's like, I'm not doing it. You got to give it to me. Here you go. Why is there 19 pages missing?
Imagine if there's TV cameras back then. This would have been like,
for real.
Holy shit. This is like, if this was going on today, we'd all be watching it.
Oh, yeah. And as I was talking to Nick on his other program, his J.P. Chase, the guy who put the term "In God We Trust" on our money because the people were begging that you do that. He was supposedly a very religious man. He kept defying Lincoln. So about his sixth time that he says, I'm going to quit if you blah, blah, blah. He's like, all right, I accept your resignation. What? And then later, Lincoln was such a cool guy because he always wanted to have his enemies nearby. He nominates Chase to the Supreme Court. Lincoln's dying. They send a messenger saying, hey, yo, the president, he's just been shot. You want to go and see him? Nope. Sleeps overnight. Gets up the next morning, starts walking towards the building that Lincoln's in, walks right past it, and starts doing the initiation ceremony for President V.P. Johnson.
Wow. Couldn't even fucking wait for the body to get cold.
Literally, dude.
Yeah.
And again, did he have knowledge? Was he part of the group? Because Chase was also a Mason. You literally can find it in Ohio. He's got a little thing with his hand in his pocket. He's the founder of Chase Banks that we have today.
So J.P. Morgan and J.P. Chase, they're both J.P.s?
All right. Suspicious there.
What the fuck's that stand for?
Oh.
Yes. And apparently he didn't like Lincoln because Lincoln was a very casual, kickback, telling jokes in the office sort of guy. And this guy was like a staunch, you don't tell jokes in politics, you know. And I'm like, again, the more I read about Lincoln, the guy would pace the floor back and forth every night. And remorse of people that were dying on the battlefields. He was in anguish. He's like, how come these generals cannot like find some way to make sure we have the most minimalist amount of casualties? He would sign, like a lady would run up to him saying, my son's about to be executed for falling asleep during watch. He would sign a letter and make sure that kid did not get that, or a lot of Confederates. You'd only be imprisoned until the end of the war. Was he breaking some constitutional stuff? Maybe. But again, Civil War, anybody ever had this before me? No? All right, shut up.
Yeah, I don't think they were thinking about a civil war already when they wrote the Constitution. They're like, this shit's going to work.
Yeah.
It's not going to be a civil war.
A lot of it, I kind of have to give Lincoln credit. I think, you know, I read the was it Jerryman or Merryman? Yeah, Merryman trial, where basically they arrested the guy for allegedly burning bridges that didn't really have proof, did have proof, you know, whatever. And this whole thing of habeas corpus. And I've read it, and I'm like, I honestly, at the end of the day, I think Lincoln made the best call. I mean, this is a time of civil war. He had the right to kind of say, you know what, I kind of had to pull the dictator move here. Don't really want to do it, but at the same time, I can't be having people who are friendly with the South running around causing me problems just because, we don't really have any. It's like, yes, you do. You were part of the militia. You were very involved with the politics that was leaning towards the South, and he couldn't afford to lose Maryland. That's where it was. The jury was going on. He's like, if I lose another that stays, I'm going to be freaking screwed. That's where my capital is. So, yeah, another incident that you keep getting off into these rabbit trails.
Yeah, I know. It's like the Democratic Party forming. Are we getting close to that?
Yes. Another incident, you can find this in the movie. I was actually impressed that, of all people, Steven Spielberg.
I've never watched it just because he's Steven Spielberg, but it's good. Because I love Daniel Day-Lewis is one of my favorite actors.
No, Amistad. And that had Anthony...
Amistad, okay. I thought you were going Lincoln.
Yes.
Anthony Hopkins, Matthew McConaughey, that famous hot black guy.
Yeah. And the guy that was just in the Andor series, the older guy, that had that really cool speech, a.k.a. Will Turner's father. He's in that movie, too. Incredibly young. But it's incredibly good because I think it was very insightful in understanding the politics building up to the Civil War. If people don't get the visual, for me, I was like, oh, wow, this is for me, it really brought alive the scenario and the mindsets of what was going on in the people and the politics. If you read a lot too, you're not just like, oh, this is a cute story, nice freedom. Hey. You're actually like, oh, context. I'm understanding now how this is building up, how this affected the politics around the world, why England and France nearly joined twice in the Civil War. One of the reasons there was a three-split way why Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation. One, yes, to free the slaves. Two, because England and France were already kind of making merry, saying, we need to go over there, we need to join the South. They have total right. We're going to lose economic stuff if we don't support them. So Lincoln's like, you know what? Both your countries have already canceled slavery. If I sign the Emancipation Proclamation and you guys join the South, you basically are hypocrites on the extreme. And imagine the press come back on that if you guys actually joined them. So signing that, by default, he canceled any chance of allies forging with the South. And for me, I'm like, that's an amazing political maneuver to actually think of something like that. The Trent affair that occurred prior to that, England had actually sent steamers and a couple 100,000 guys into Canada the minute the Trent affair happened, which is where two Confederacy guys were caught. They were going to be emissaries to England to just negotiate. And this was seized by some admiral. You couldn't do that. The vessel they were on, they couldn't just seize it in a time war. You can't do that. And they sent steamers. The guy went down to talk to Lee. this British guy, he went down to talk to Lee, talking about how they would do the invasion, how they could literally bombard with their steamers that they already had and America was trying to build. They didn't have the Monitor just yet. And they could literally just steamroll right down through the north, have the South push up to, and boom, war's over. Not a chance. So Lincoln had to apologize for that. But yeah, Amistad was, I think, 1840s, 52, one of the two, somewhere in there. So yeah, Knights of the Golden Circle now is gaining some traction. And by the 1850s, 1860s, they like, all right, we're going to throw in our lot and join the Confederacy. Texas was one of the only states to actually vote to secede. A lot of people don't know that. They actually had a vote.
They're still fucking trying today.
Right? I'm like, you actually had a vote. I'm actually impressed. They're actually one of the few, they're the only state that didn't have Lincoln on the ballot, too. Yeah. Yeah. And a fun fact, none of Lincoln's family members voted for him. Not one.
Dude, that guy had it so rough. I had no idea. Cunt family.
It was
Wife.
I honestly just want to give the bro a hug. I'm like, I understand your face now.
He's tall and ugly and just had shit luck.
Really good at politics and a really great sense of humor through it all, though. And that's what I love about the guy. You know, he stood his ground. And I'm like, dude, I just want to give you a hug. I got three people on a table. It'd be Jesus, Lincoln, and Don Rickles.
I don't want to like get dark, but maybe Booth did him a favor. He's just like, dude, you got it.
No, that was in the book. It's perhaps the greatest tragedy of Lincoln's life was not so much his assassination, but his marriage.
Yeah, he's like, dude,
you're better off
thinking about doing this. I tried to do this with a pocket knife. You're just setting me fucking free.
Well, okay, so the reason Grant was not in the theater is the day before, Mary Todd was freaking in a carriage. They were going on a tour through the South, and then the war was over. They're seeing like the fortifications, stuff like that. Lincoln's riding, solo on a saddle, talking to another lady, and she starts. She's starting to go on to the other lady that are in the cart, including General Grant's wife. So later on, when they get this invitation, do you want to join us at the theater? Grant was like, yeah, totally. And his wife's like, no, we are not sitting in the same booth as that
bitch
lady.
Saved his life.
For real.
Probably would have capped both of them, right?
Yes. And this, for that reason, he's like, all right, we're going to be doing something with her family. We can't make it. So again, dumb luck, but because of Mrs. Lincoln, that's the reason they weren't in the booth. And that's why they invited the other couple to come in their stead. There's
another phonetic correlation, Booth and Booth.
Yes, right?
I was just thinking that myself.
Tell me that was not intentional. And just prior to Booth going up there, he had a drink with one of the stage people down below. And he's saying, you're never going to be as good as your brother or your father on stage. When Booth jumped and went down running into the back, that was the guy he knifed. When he was he's like, get out of my way. And he cut him with the knife. I was like, whoa. Wow. Kind of proving his little, sowing his oats here. And he wasn't even womanizer.
Successful, and he fucking acted like a diva.
Oh, yeah. Dude, he was an incredible womanizer. Errol Flynn had nothing on this guy. But he was actually incredibly generous with his money. If anybody ever needed it, he'd always offer it up. He was helping people on stage to stand here, blah, blah, blah. Incredibly clumsy. He actually shot himself one time in a hotel room with a buddy of his.
What?
Yep. He actually knifed himself another time. He did a jump and he ended up getting cut in a fight on a stage. He's had another woman try to kill him that was jealous because he knew that the same week he was cheating on her. And so she tried to go and knife him. And there was newspaper reports on this too. Didn't press charges.
This guy was a shit show.
You're guilty.
Yo, women didn't take no shit back then either, huh?
No,
obviously.
No, dude.
I know
trying
the
to knife
feminists
everybody.
will tell you it sounds like they were always fucking raging feminists.
Oh yeah. And did you know that Booth was engaged?
No.
When he did this, he was?
Yep. When they found his body, he had 5 pictures of ladies in his coat pocket. One of them was an actress from the South. A couple of them actually actresses from the South. Another one was a senator's daughter. That's who he was.
So this was
engaged
just
to.
all chicks he was fucking.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, he had
Shows
at
him
least
off on his
60, 70
travels.
body count.
It's like when you have your iPhone today.
Yes.
It says like a pocket full of fucking pictures.
Yo, I just smashed that shit 2 months ago.
Yeah. Social media.
This was a senator's daughter that was about to be appointed to be an ambassador for Spain.
The
by
one he
Lincoln.
was engaged to?
Yes, and she ended up marrying another guy, and that guy, their grandson during World War I, ended up becoming some hero. You can actually look it up.
So all this shit is really just altering history, however you look at it. Like,
Oh, for real. And
if that didn't happen, that guy never would have been born.
Booth was present during the second inauguration. He was friends with President Johnson back in the day. They were going around and they were going visiting prostitutes together. The very night.
They're Eskimo bros.
The very night that Johnson was in, he claims I was drunk at the time. Again, I've compiled a lot of stories and I got the real one going on. So he claims I was drunk the time that Lincoln was getting assassinated. He was drunk during the inauguration. He totally goofed it up. Lincoln had another guy, Hubert Hamilton or something Hamilton, somebody Hamilton. And they ended up replacing him with Johnson. And Johnson, he was actually having a night with one of Booth's girls.
Was he a fucking alcoholic?
A letter
Was
saying, I'll let you do anything you want to me. So he's like, fine, I'm going to have you having a little affair with the vice president, and I'm going to have one of my guys go in there and stab him. But that's the guy that lost his nerve and couldn't do it. But the door was left ajar by her. So when he's giving, oh, yeah, I was drunk, just go with the comment scandal that everybody knows about me, as opposed to, I was having an affair with one of Booth's lovers.
Yeah, when you're a sloppy fucking drunk, it's just always a good excuse, no matter what was going on. Like, I was drunk.
Well, the thing is with Johnson, not to mention that he revoked the awards, but he was friends with Albert Pike. The first time Albert Pike met him, at least according to records, was to first get pardon after the Civil War. And the second time is during Johnson's impeachments, he came to visit him in the White House. Yeah.
Dude, your Uncle Pike, he just keeps popping up everywhere.
Uncle Cousin, I'm still trying to figure out where he connects.
great Uncle Pike.
Yeah, he's a tough bird. But again, he was actually in charge of the Native Americans during the Civil War. A lot of people don't know that the Cherokees actually took their slaves when they went over there. So again, when people go out, I'm like, don't even start with me on this one. I could go.
Elizabeth Warren's family had slaves.
You owe me reparations. Julius Caesar owes the Gauls reparations for involuntarily slaughtering Gauls. Rome owes them reparations. I'm just stating that right here. Build a wall. Rome does not deserve to have Gaul. But where was I going with that one? Talking about reparations. Native Americans. And the Native Americans actually wanted to stay with the Union, but the Union was like, you know what? We have enough of our own resources trying to just support and feed the guys that we got. They might actually go join the South anyway, so you're on your own. So when the South went up there, they're like, listen, we will allow you to have members in our Senate and our Congress. We'll allow you to join and be part of our groups, yada, yada, yada. Yeah, they were making these deals. And of course,
that we need you.
Great. They were like, we could use some trackers and whatnot. So they're over here like, yeah, well, we just want to feed my family and stuff like that. And we get to be respected. Heck yeah. Then after about 8-9 months, it started going crappy because the Confederacy was like, all right, we got to go track down this other tribe. It's like, well, I have a cousin that's in that particular group. Well, you got to go track them down. And eventually it ended up becoming a little bit of a flustercluck where they're like, okay, this isn't working for us. So, yeah, we're done.
I can't remember.
Back to the north.
I can't remember what movie it was, but I did even see a movie where I think I saw that scenario depicted where, like, Indians found themselves, like, and I think other Indians almost had names for them, or it seemed like, this movie could be completely wrong, but, like, they consider them, like, like dogs to the fucking white people, because it's like you even hunt your own with them. Like, you're fucking crap, And I had seen that, if that's truthful, I've seen, like, movies with that scenario in it. And that's fucking wild. Imagine being in that position.
Fights,
I gotta go fucking go with these motherfuckers to go get my own.
All the wars that the natives ended up in the middle of, there's like countless wars, like the fucking French Indian Wars, the War of 1812. Is that the one? Where it's like fucking everybody around the world fighting in the southern part of the country. Like, but the Indians were always right in the middle of it.
Yep. They're being used. That's what I keep telling people. I'm like, every time the government, the U.S. government's helping you, like the Buffalo Soldiers. Let's look at that scenario. Why'd you send the Buffalo Soldiers? Because black guy gets killed, no loss to us. Indian guy gets killed, win. Okay, yeah, you can be soldiers. Go kill them. And what do you get in the end? The white guy gets the land. And I'm a Tuskegee Airman, and I was talking about this on one of the other podcasts with my buddy Marcelo, because he was bringing up some stuff, and then I'd bring up some stuff, and I'm like, yo, dude, you're right. Every freaking time they're using the Black Panthers. They were using them to help bring in the drugs from Mexico and South America, and they freaking killed one of the top guys when he was about to come forward and talk about it. They killed him right. This thing made it look like it was a mob, an anti-gang hit or whatever. It's like, no, that's the CIA. They can't afford to have these people start talking about where they originally got some of this group going on.
One question I did want to ask you. I mean, I guess we'll be getting there eventually, but like something
we're merging into that territory.
Something I was just wondering, because even just at the times and stuff that was going on, I do feel that now the Democratic Party, to get where it's gotten, has like kind of used and placated races and identities. You know, like they'll tell them
a lot lately.
Yeah,
like the last few years.
Yeah,
holy shit.
But it's almost like I almost wonder, like, did they see opportunities that they're seeing now to get a rise? You know what I'm saying? Like, did they kind of like use these people really, and weren't really in their best interest? They just played the role.
I think you could actually state that it's more so that both sides were playing the role. Because Sam Houston was a Christian, also a Freemason. Did he make it up to 33 degree? I don't know. But again, you can kind of tell their true colors if they make it higher up the rank, because you can't claim oblivious as to what it's going on after a certain point. He was incredibly pro-states or union, that he was like, no, we shouldn't succeed. And that's the reason why he kind of didn't get voted in again as governor, because they're kind of having repetitious voting at that time. But this time they're like, no, if you don't agree with us in the South's mentality, get out. Even being a member of the Knights of the Golden Circle. And then you also had other members that were like, I'm totally pro states' rights, and I don't think blah, blah. So the mentality of this whole hydra of Freemasonry, and again, that they have the Illuminati, they have this, they have that. When you get into the hydra mentality, they don't care at the end of the day what your personal politics are. You can have those. Totally fine. As long at the end of the day, the ultimate mission gets pushed forward, which is order through chaos, we'll play both sides till the day is done. Civil War, World War I, World War II, we'll fund both sides. But guess what? Either side wins. We come out as top dog because we control the finances. That's the same thing with the Napoleonic War. That's actually how Rothschild came into power. You familiar with that story?
No.
So basically, they say that France has just invaded England's shores. So he sends a little emissary to say, go tell London they're about to get sacked by the French. Says, okay, I'll run down there. And then when they do, they said, well, I got to get out of town. And he starts buying penny on the dollar all the businesses that are moving out.
Yeah, I have heard this.
Yeah.
He fucking played
and so
both
now
sides.
he owns the majority of London. And that's why they're now known as the Lords of London, because they own most of the property. They're the ones that basically are controlling the royal family, the Gettys, so Getty Images. The guy was just messaging me today. Totally crazy story. They tried taking him out. Gettys connect to Gavin Newsom over in California. That's that family that they connect to. And they tried taking this guy out a couple times. They connect with Disney. And Disney owns all of the media corporations. When you start looking into this and you start connecting the family history and the secret society connections, you're like, you guys are just a really bad dudes. You're not trying to create family entertainment. You're trying to manipulate the masses.
It's been fucking in the works for fucking ever.
You know what I did find recently that I thought was interesting, and I don't want to get too off now from the topic of where we are.
Right. I got immediately we can get right back in.
Have you ever heard of Ezra Pound?
Name's ringing a bell.
He was an occultist that somehow was involved with a scientist over here that ended up getting involved in MK Ultra. He was like even his psychiatrist at one point, and deemed him insane, so he didn't have to like go to. I think he was actually arrested here for treason. But whatever, he was originally from Italy, but this is an occultist, and back in the day, before, he really got like hugely popular as being like treasonist or whatever. He was kind of popular, and he was known almost as like a whistleblower, and they do credit him with being like one of the first people to put the name the Rothschilds even out there as a family.
Nice.
He was the name
But
dropper.
this is what I'm getting at. Now, I do believe the Rothschilds are definitely involved in stuff, but if a magician told us what they're doing, I don't know if you can fully trust that story either.
Yeah, it'd be like
Well-
if Werner von Braun told you something.
Yeah. It's like maybe you threw them out there under a certain idea of what they're doing. They're probably involved, but maybe doing something else. That's what I'm getting at. Like, I'm sure it's just like I don't know if I'd fully take what an occultist is telling citizens.
But also, no. Did you know why Houdini was taken out?
Mm-mm.
He literally wrote some books. Look it up on BuzzFeed Unsolved. They did a whole episode on this one. For like 20 minutes. He was trying to go after the occult. And he's basically saying, you guys are lying about this. He wrote some books about it. I'm trying to figure out who it was. Somebody that was famous over, was it Lewis Carroll? I can't remember. Somebody that wrote some stuff, and they were doing a seance, and he says, I want to kind of talk to my mom or whatever it was.
I think that might be
And he
Lewis
basically
Carroll.
he was writing out all this stuff, exposing them, saying that this is, you guys are liars. I can tell you what kind of party tricks you're doing. And he started writing books on this stuff. And basically, like, again, unsolved, but they make a pretty damning case.
Oh, yeah.
The occult took you out because you were exposing what's going on behind closed doors that we're freaking frauding everybody.
Hey, NY, did you remember that Julia linked Houdini to Laurel Canyon?
Oh, God, yeah.
She didn't explain it. It's in her episode. She didn't talk about it on ours. So is he more of a magician or an illusionist? Like, what side is he on? Is he like really doing shit, or is he kind of just like a good parlor trick guy?
I say parlor trick.
Okay,
But he acknowledges the
that
art,
makes sense that
and
he would
doesn't
call
like
the secret societies out there.
Yes, and I think he respects the art. I mean, he also understands, like, you guys, it's basically like a samurai. You have to respect my sword. You have to respect the art that goes into this. You can't just, like, go out and start swinging something randomly. You have to respect the mentality, the time, the training that goes into this. Where these other guys are just going, we don't care. We're going to scum you guys all over. We're going to be a snake oil salesman. He's like, no, it's for entertainment. What you guys are doing is to manipulate people.
Right.
And I think that's kind of where his irk came from. So I would say illusionist, personally.
I think he was a magician being an illusionist.
There you go. Yeah, that's magic in
Yes.
itself, right?
Well, I mean, yeah. The thing is like if you think about how magicians back then work, it's pretty much the same way the propaganda on the TV works. We're being shown something and not the whole situation. Taking out of
it's
context,
always
sleight of hand.
The rabbit symbology and pulling a rabbit.
Yeah,
out.
the CGI, whatever. We're giving you a false reality, or we're making you look at something and confused about what you're seeing.
Well, it's even the origins of the word Hollywood. That comes from the Druids and the Hollywood trees that they used to use. Again, you look up this stuff, it starts making sense, and then you connect.
So like magic wands.
I had one made
Yeah.
out of Hollywood. I purposely bought for that shit. Yeah, it's
And
supposed
again, they're putting
to.
up
Yeah,
that
make sure it
imagery.
was cut on a Wednesday on the hour of Mercury. That's how you're supposed to do it. You're supposed to like cut it from one swift, only one shot at it. And you're supposed to cut it on the hour of Mercury on a fucking Wednesday. And all that
Meanwhile,
shit.
they're just like printing them out at an Amazon factory. This
Yep.
was kind of, it's like,
Yeah, it's like recycled paper, and they make it look like a piece of
It
wood.
might have been fucking legit. Who knows?
It came from another country, so I mean, I'm hoping. So.
Taiwan or China?
Possibly China. we don't
No,
know.
it was like the reason.
It's like the Amazon factory, like I said.
I checked, and it was like that tree was like kind of well known in that country. I forgot where it came from, but
Did
I'm
you pay
assuming.
a lot for it?
No, I got like 2 of them for like $25.
Oh, nice.
I was,
Good deal.
So would you like me to read a quote by one of the
Sure.
black representatives?
Uh-huh.
Okay, so he was during the debates on a certain bill about the Ku Klux Klan. It was Representative Robert Brown Elliott of South Carolina addressed the issue of Southern violence and delivered a compelling speech. The Democratic Party of the South, as evidenced in the utterances of its recognized organs, official writings, and leaders, exhibits and declared purpose to defeat the ballot with the bullet and other coercive means. I have presented a few of the manifold proofs in support of the facts warranting the passage of this bill. I have shown and declared the purpose of the Ku Klux Klan organization, and I refer to the official records of nearly every southern state the past 10 months to show how the bloody purpose has been in part executed. This bill will tend in some degree to prevent its full achievement. I do not wish to understand as speaking for the colored man alone when I demand instant protection for the loyal men of the South. No, sir, my demand is not so restricted. The white Republican of the South is also hunted down and murdered or scourged for his opinion's sake. And during the past 2 years, more than 600 loyal men of both races have perished in my state alone. Yet, sir, it is true that these masked murderers strike chiefly at the black race simply because he exercises his privileges as an American freeman. You Democrats would drive him into exile with the pitiless lash or doom him to swift murder, seeking your revenge for political power lost by moving at midnight along the path of the assassin. I trust, sir, that this bill will pass quickly and quickly enforce, lest the Democratic Party triumph in the states of the South through armed violence. Calls out that both white and black people were tortured by the Ku Klux Klan for opinion. For opinion.
Yeah, thugs don't discriminate.
No.
We go after every. But for me, I'll get sometimes comments like, "Oh, you wouldn't understand Black history or Africa because you're not from there, and therefore anything you think
That's
about."
all it takes to understand it.
Yeah, and I'm like, wait, are you basically saying that skin color is like intelligence level of understanding?
Funny how that doesn't
continents?
work both ways, isn't it?
That's what I'm saying. I'm like, so I, by right, can say that you don't know anything about Europe, America, South America, Asia, or Australia because you're black, and therefore you're illiterate. Whoa, if I say that, incredibly racist. But
yeah, when they play by their own rules, shit fucking crumbles.
Right, and when I try to understand your culture, I'm deemed a bad guy. But like we see throughout history, this guy is calling it out right here. This book is incredible. Again, History in Black and White by David Barton, is that he points out that both blacks and whites were being picked on. And when he doesn't talk about too much of the Knights of the Golden Circle as this other book does. He touches on it, and there's a lot of sketches in here that he has from historical newspapers of the time. Of showing depictions of the Knights of the Golden Circle or KGZ. Again, do we talk about that in history in our history books? No. Do we talk about how it was the origination of the KKK, which eventually led to the 1960s race riots? No. We just immediately go, "Oh, whites are racist." Where did you come up with that? There was a group that was promoting this from the start. They were the influence for the Sisters of the South. In the 1920s, when they started building all the monuments, they were part of that. They were influencing that big time. They were big time sponsors. Don't talk about that. But now we have all these statues being torn down. We don't understand origins and context. Now we just get, "Oh, you're tearing down a part of history." What was their motives? Can we ask that? Kind of like Karl Marx. Can we ask about the personal guy's life to see if his philosophy is worth incorporating?
Does he have a shady life?
Oh, you don't know about Karl Marx?
I barely know about his works enough to not give a fuck about looking at
brother.
Okay. Hey, I'd love to have you on mine sometime too, and maybe Nick can co-host on that one.
Yeah, sure.
Totally. Yeah.
We do a Karl Marx episode for sure.
Yeah, I would actually, really be interested in having
do a little
done.
swap cast then.
Yeah,
I can
that'd
do
be
that.
great.
Karl Marx and connecting it to the Illuminati. I've got.
Oh, say no more.
Yeah.
We'll get to that.
Oh, I think he was an
Sorry to
occultist
get
for
us
sure,
off
though.
track.
That I do think. From some of the things I have heard people quote from him, I'm like, that sounds like fucking like an occultist throwing out some.
Yeah, it's like once you learn about Joseph Smith, if you still take Mormonism seriously, that's kind of what I want to get into with Carl. Like,
Oh, he was a Freemason too.
oh, he was?
Oh yeah, Joseph
Jehovah's
Smith.
Witnesses,
Yo, they don't
book
even
was
deny that
Zion.
shit. The Mormons, they don't
Well,
even deny it. You can go.
Yeah.
Smith. Yes. I knew that about him.
No,
I
they're
thought
like,
we were
oh
talking
yeah, he
about
was a
Marx.
Mason. Doesn't mean anything.
Okay. Yeah.
They have
Amazing,
videos.
just
They have
some dumb
videos.
kid.
They have
They're
videos
like,
on
so is
YouTube.
George Washington. Stop it.
Hold on, Washington. Hold up. There's another book that went on this. I actually have it. Like I'm staring right at it. There's another book that he did. Again, 120, 150 pages, each one of these guys' books, but it's incredibly potent and informative because you get letters, you get context, you get what the person actually thought about. John Adams was incredibly against the Jesuits and Masons. We don't
John
care about
Adams
that.
was.
Oh yeah. So I'm like, I like John Adams. John Adams, good guy.
What about
But-
Franklin?
Oh, do you know
We're
I'm related
going
to him too?
Oh, you son of a bitch!
Eighth grade cousin, and I can prove it.
You even know the degrees of this one, not like
yes.
Pike. Okay.
This one I got.
Eighth cousins with Benjamin.
Because his mother's name was Abigail Folger. My great grandfather, the 10th one.
That
Peter
sounds like
Folger.
Abigail Folger that died at the Manson shit.
I was thinking that name when he said that.
Abigail Folger. So it's very similar to get back to fanatics. But yeah, Abigail
Folger. I'm not sure how it's
But
pronounced.
Folger was like the coffee heiress. She died at the pre-Manson murders. So that's a weird little kind of.
That was the first thing I thought of when I heard that name.
Well, yeah, you can't not think about that.
Thanks.
So
wow.
Dude.
Yeah,
it's
Peter
okay.
Folger.
You're not your family. You're you.
I don't think so. They're coming after me now. He had two daughters, Bathsheba Folger and Abigail Folger. Bathsheba Folger was actually one of the Salem witch trial accusers.
Oh.
And I think it was her or it was another lady called Anne. Both of them are my grandma's. One of them threw a shoe during the trial.
I remember that scene in the movie. Get back to Daniel Day-Lewis.
That'd be the one. And Abigail was the mother of Benjamin Franklin, so therefore I'm able to be like, okay, eighth grade cousin.
Wow.
Also, I'm related to one of the guys that was the only judge that was speaking on behalf of the Salem witch trial guys. His name was Major Judge Moses Pike.
Oh wow, Moses.
Also related to the first officer recruited into the United States Coast Guard, Hopley Eaton.
That's interesting. I mean, you got Albert Pike with the Masons, and then you have a Pike with the Salem witch trials. It's like, what the fuck?
Oh, my family gets around, dude. I'm looking at some of the stuff. I'm like, I just did one on.
Why did it take you so long to start a podcast, good sir?
One, I'm technically like totally stupid.
No, obviously you're not. You've proved that in the last hour or whatever. How long we've been.
I can read like crazy. I love defending history. I love arguing my points because I really think Peterson hit the nail on the head. Is as long as you can write and you can speak up for yourself, you can literally conquer anything. And I think even at work,
this is Jordan Peterson.
Jordan Peterson, yeah, he said something. As long as you can write, as long as you have the speaking abilities, you can like do anything in life. I'm like, yeah.
Then he got a job with the Daily Wire, and I stopped.
Yeah, I know that one hit me hard.
He's like a Zionist now.
Sounds like a bumblebee.
Yeah, trans bumblebee.
Anyway, my wife's a doctor. Anyways, I can debate any college girl on campus because I'm like smarter than her.
Wow, dude, you got that shit down.
Dude, I hate hearing him talk.
I know.
I have to slow down his stuff. I'm like, I can take Michael Knowles.
No, he's a guy that you have to put in slow speed to even tolerate.
Yeah, but even the stuff that he presents, it's hit of the radical left. But that's the radical left. Whereas Knowles, he might use some of that words, but he actually gives context, culture, and build up of what we're dealing with present. That's why
he's more graceful for sure.
Right. And again, I'm very picky about who I'm following with my news selection. There's a lady in India that I follow, and she was talking about stuff about Putin's grandfather and how it leads to present, and like just build up of the guy himself before we just start tackling this whole Ukraine problem. What's the mentality of this guy? I'm like, this is the kind of research and stuff that should be on the news. So that we're not just impulsively doing, think of the poor people of Ukraine. I want to know about the individual. I want to know about the historical context. I want to know what led to this. So I'm not just impulsively doing something off the cuff because my emotions are feeling it. That's my favorite speech in all plays is the speech with Mark Antony. Is when he freaking manipulates the whole funeral eulogy to have the people riot on his behalf. And now he has utilized the mob to do what he wants.
That was the first
do.
January 6th event.
For real, dude. For real. And
only like the one they sold, not the one that really happened, but
Do you know the symbology of January 6th?
Man, we're in the weeds. I don't know.
Sorry, but
I'd rather. I have touched upon that before on my own show, so we'll go back to the topic.
Okay.
Are you familiar with how it connects to Christmas?
January 6th?
I could see. I could totally see that.
I'll go back. But January 6th was allegedly the day that the wise men came to visit Jesus Christ.
So he's like
January 6th is also the day he allegedly was baptized by Christmas tradition.
I didn't know that.
But when you look up the word MAGA, high priest
Magus.
position on the Church of Satan website.
Yeah, I think the temple is set to the Magus. Yes.
Yeah, So again, for me, I'm like this. Interesting. So baptism, birth ceremony, January 6th.
Yo, that outfit he was wearing was like legit. Like, I think I showed it when me and Lux covered it. It was like legit almost for even the drawing we pulled out of a magic book for like a war ritual. We were like, it's the same fucking thing he was wearing.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, and the guy's fucking, to me, it was a war ritual. That's what I thought it was.
I gotta see that.
Yeah.
I've gotta see that.
Yeah, I mean, this is going back like almost 2 years ago. You know, right recently, you know, right when after that happened.
Yeah. Right. So
I
are you
mean,
familiar with
it's
the
back
first
there.
movie that was ever shown in the White House?
No. I think have heard of this before, but I don't remember what it is.
Under Truman. He posted the Pride of the Nation, or whatever, was Strength of the Nation.
No shit. I
First
studied that movie in film school. That's a fucking, isn't that like white supremacist as fuck?
Yeah. And Truman, again, you get another book called Bloody Zion. You'll find out how Rothschild has sent his agents throughout the years. And he had a guy that was in the Truman administration. So the fact that he kind of was like, yeah, totally fine with that.
No one had showed a movie at that point in the White House. That was the first one.
Right. I'm like,
that's
seriously?
Crazy, dude.
What is that? White House. I'm kind of like, I can see that argument. I can see where you're going with this. Yeah, I'm sorry. I do apologize. Yeah, you're right. But there's other quotes in this book that was talking about, like, have you voted a Democrat if you weren't forced? He's like, only for self-preservation. How much time do we got until we have to go to part 2, or like, is this going to be able to run straight?
Well, I could probably go about another 15, 20 minutes.
Okay, I could read this one. It's an actual article that was written. And remember, this is right after the Reconstruction era. For the first 10 years, a lot of pro-legislation was going against what the Knights of the Golden Circle would want. It was afterwards, in 1876, when they reversed all of this, and they're like, no. And we went into full-on segregation. And who took charge and reins of that? It was the blacks. Who's the one that's the Democrats? Who was the one that said they didn't want the blacks to have churches, or they didn't want them to have school in the churches? That was the Knights of the Golden Circle and the KKK. They were burning down churches so they couldn't get it. Who said they couldn't have funding for education? That was the Democratic Party. Again and again and again and again. This book is like, boom. You can't argue with what these representatives and congressmen and senators were all saying in the Senate, saying, this is what's going on in my state. This is how you guys are suppressing voter ID, or people, sorry, not voter ID, but people able to vote. They're moving around the voting location so that they can't actually even get into a booth. This is serious stuff that was going on. Right now, they have still the paper bag party. Like, if you're darker than this paper bag, you can't come into this place. Yeah, this goes on, I think, right now in Mississippi.
Let me ask you something about all this. So there's this notion that the Democrats and the Republicans at some point switched. Now, is that crazy, or is this just their way of like getting away from the association with all this racist bullshit?
The documentary you want to watch, granted, it leans a little bit towards like Obama's cool, but very profound, because my buddy, he's white, but he went through the jail system, so he likes calling out the hypocrisy that he sees, because he's going through all this crap too. He had to wear the ankle bracelet, had to go through all this stuff. So I'm over here like, this is great. I'm getting the inside scoop. Well, not having to be inside. So he said, watch documentary 13. Amendment 13, I think is the name of the documentary. And basically what passed in that is that if you have been incarcerated.
That's the Netflix one?
Yes. And I think you can find it anywhere online for free.
I remember that. That's a good movie.
You seen it?
Yeah, I watched it when it came out, and I thought, like, because Netflix, I'm really skeptical of them.
I was skeptical too, but when I was watching, again, I watch things with a grain of salt. I'm like, I can take, like John Oliver, I can watch his stuff and appreciate some of his insights. He does good work, goddammit, and that pisses me off when he does. That's what I'm saying, and I'm like, except when I know he's biased, because he has all this stuff to work with on Biden, doesn't touch it. Trump, there's like 12 episodes. Watching him during COVID was enough for me. I was like, I got to take a break from this cocksucker. And that's what I did during COVID. I'm not even bothering, or that kind of stuff. But like Alex Jones, when he's touching on the other side's perspective, I'm like, this is pretty good stuff, actually. I appreciate what he's hitting on. But like I said, I watched that documentary, and it was explaining that during the Reagan era, they switched it so that the truth. Oh, that's when it happened. Yeah, law and order. They say it was like right after Civil War, because they wanted to. Okay. They implanted it in the people's minds that the drug people, all the ones that are bringing in the drugs, are blacks. They're Hispanics. That's the ones you see always getting arrested on the TV. Therefore, law and order, I like this law and order party. We get rid of them this way. This is great. And that's why now the South is incredibly red.
Joe Biden was Joe Biden was in the fucking center of all that stuff too.
Yes. And again, if people look into this stuff, they're like, do you realize when this flipped? Again, I'm like you.
The Clintons and the Bushes worked together to bring fucking coke into Arkansas and then flood the inner city with it. And then the fucking Koch brothers used to fund Bill Clinton.
That does not surprise me at all.
They did. Like, a lot of people don't know that. Like, they're not staunch Republicans. They fund whoever the fuck carries out that agenda. And it was the Clintons, but way before it was Bush.
Well, that's my buddy was talking about the Black Rifle Coffee Company. You heard about that one?
Oh, yeah.
Isn't he CIA guy?
I think so. And they're like, well, if you're not Republican, then why are you having conservatives sell your stuff? Because they're better at marketing.
Oh, always have been.
I was like, wow.
Look at the new Bud Light commercial for an example of that bullshit.
I've even said this when it comes to the two parties. You know, like the one side I think will just like kind of steal your money through like bullshit. The other side, they'll just sell you books, fucking sweaters, and fucking T-shirts, NFTs. You know. So they all have their ways of taking money from people. You know, they have their ways. I mean, every time you put on fucking Fox, you got to see a 2-minute fucking My Pillow commercial. It's like, Jesus fucking Christ.
Or you could watch Disinfobation and see a My Dildo commercial instead.
Oh, gosh.
Little shameless plug there, sorry.
But that's what I liked about John Oliver's. We just did an episode on that. What about whataboutism?
Oh, yeah, I saw that. I saw
that episode.
That's a fucking great
Loved
name.
it.
I saw that name. I was like, what the fuck is this?
That's genius.
But I was like, that John Oliver nailed it because he showed like several clips all on Fox, especially Sean Hannity.
He could have shown fucking clips from his own show if he wanted to really drive that nail home.
Yeah. That's where we kind of argued on our show, is just like, well, did he touch on this, blah, blah, blah. And again, I just like bringing up the idea, though, is that when we're actually saying, oh, Clinton did this, well, what about Trump? Well, what about Obama? Well,
what about all of them?
Right. And again, I'm like, that's the kind of question I really appreciate when somebody's asking, because we're not staying on topic. We now give a list of 8 to 10 things. Before the end of the day, you're like,
well, it's when it's used to divert the conversation from what your guy's doing. That's when it's fucking stupid to do whataboutism. But when you're critical of all of them, you can do whataboutism.
And that's when you lose friends.
They weren't your friends to begin with. If you not agreeing with them is what's at stake for your friendship, fuck that.
Well, that's the thing, is like, I had a buddy of mine that was in Florida, and he claims to be a libertarian. And I was going on this whole conspiracy stuff, or I was showing links during COVID, because I've known this stuff for years, but it was like 2020 that I had a little light bulb where I'm like, you know what? I can't be quiet. I have to actually talk about what I know.
COVID started more podcasts than any other event in history.
For real. And I think that they're like, crap, it's whack-a-mole fire. Now we have to freaking censor everybody online. Quick, get Project Bluebeam so we can crash the internet.
Restrict Act, will it in.
For real, dude. I'm like, people don't get it. But he called me, I think it was, quote, an Alex Jones with a narcissistic superiority complex.
It's a compliment, depending on who's saying it.
Oh, that was an unfriend right there. I'm like, you're not a friend. I'm sorry, dude. But that's what you've derived after like these 2-hour wrong. And again, I'm very good with my words on stating plainly where I am, not going, oh, panic, exclamation point, all caps, make sure you read and like, no, I'm giving you sources, links, how I've derived this conclusion, what my conviction is on it. You have the right to disagree with me. I respect that. But use your words. Don't just call somebody a name and not have any explanation as to where you're coming from. I think a lot of people, they say they're libertarian because they're just cynic of both parties and they don't know exactly what a libertarian is. Me, you do you, I do me. You can do whatever you want in the other room.
Well, that brings me to something you said earlier, that you're more libertarian centrist. And you also stated that political parties are cults. So how do you feel about the current state of the Libertarian Party, the LP, with fucking Mises Caucus and all the infighting and all that stuff? Are you part of that, or are you just a libertarian at heart?
Just libertarian at heart. And again, I say conservative libertarian, and I've done polls and stuff like that. And right where I land is like right above the centrist by like 2 degrees, and like 4 degrees below Rand Paul's father. And I'm like, yeah, that's again, it's like right in the middle of this little square. And I'm like, yeah, that sounds about right for me, because I don't buy the parties. I'm also a Christocrat, which is I think it was Benjamin Rush that came up with that term. It says at the end of the day, just show humility that you're before God and you're before men. It's not about your power. It's not about, ultimately, keep a focus here, that you have to have humility, that you are serving people, that you're not to get served, you know, for self-service. And I'm like, I really like that. I really like that perspective, because we put so much faith in our politicians that when somebody points out their nefarious dealings, they freaking lose it.
Yeah, people worship these motherfuckers. It makes me sick.
Especially news hosts, and that's what I called it. Is that they're societal parrots. They are so obsessed and enthralled with what they see on the screen, hearing their rhetoric, hearing how they're arguing their case. Next day, they go out, they repeat what Tucker said last night, they repeat what John Oliver said last night.
Is it any fucking coincidence that Don Lemon and Tucker Carlson got fired on the same day? They fucking gave us both sides what they wanted. Like,
yes. And where are they all going? Between 2020 and 2023, we start seeing all these people, CEOs stepping down, Twitter, Amazon. It's elites. You think they're doing this on? Yes, they're doing it on purpose.
Well,
where are they
Glenn
going? The
Beck
underground bunkers.
Started Blaze TV. Imagine what Tucker's going to start. Tucker's career is not going away. The people
I think
that
he's
are
going to make more money
this,
now.
He will make way more money.
He's going to be a conspiracy theorist. He'll be another Alex Jones.
Yeah, he already has skirted those lines. He'll make fucking Shapiro and Glenn Beck look like nothing when he gets his fucking network going. So these liberals that are like celebrating on Twitter, he's not going away, you fucking idiots. Yeah. He's the CIA's fucking top show right now. It's not going to stop.
Ended it with a pizza. Did you see that?
Now I could at least.
Somebody messaged me is that he ordered a pizza. I said, "Well, that's
nice nice tip of the hat there, Tucker."
He's
like conspiracy theorists. Follow me over here.
Pizza, anyone?
Yeah. Wow.
Fuck, wow. Joe, so I have a question for you, and then I guess we'll wrap it up there. And like, I mean, you're probably gonna be like, did you even pay attention at all? But
did you want me to do a second part with the reading?
Well, how long is that? How long do you got for that?
Probably 3 minutes time.
Oh, okay, yeah. No, that's fine. You could do that. I just did want to ask, because I know we had, it was like one of the first things you brought up, and I did question them again. When it comes to, I guess, the Democratic Party, was this Golden Circle thing kind of like an influence to creating it, or was the grammar?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Heavily. Every single one of the members that were part of the Knights of the Golden Circle were Democrats. Every single one of them.
So was it just a rebranding of this Golden Circle bitches to Democratic Party?
Basically, I guess the best way to describe the Masonic aspect of this stuff is that they have all these big people. Again, it's a club, all the successful people, newspapermen, and then how do you start influencing your society? Originally, it was coercion. We're going to use guns. Then it came in media. How do we influence it and change our history down here? How do we make it sound like the South were the good guys? How do we make it sound like being a rebel is a real good thing? That mentality
is use Kid Rock.
Yes. Again, start using and manipulating people with what they identify with. We don't care where you are on the ladder. We'll just start using that person to create this idea and make you guys do what we want you to do. And again, play both sides.
That's exactly.
At
I
the
remember.
End of the day, it's a win.
Me and you were, I think, chatting, and I was telling you because I at some point I would like to cover the KKK myself, like with an occult aspect, and I'm pretty much convinced it was just a magical like psyop to just play both sides and get shit. It was just chaos that both sides were involved in. That's all I think it is.
Yeah, honestly, this book would be really worth it. It's only like 120 something pages, but just to skim for your own research. I think you'd find a lot of potent little tidbits in there.
That's the one that was written by the Barton guy, Dave
Barton. You take notes. I love it.
Oh yeah, dude, I fucking learned more from talking to people like you than I did going to school.
And that's what I talk about with the Agora is that we're actually learning, we're gaining knowledge about what somebody's perspective or opinion is. And I try to get in guests that are actually like thinking outside the box. They're not just stuck in their ways. My co-host kind of half-baked, still trying to pull him into the conspiracy aspect of reality.
Oh,
but
no shit. I want to check out your show. That's interesting.
Yeah,
So he's
name's
like
Brian, but I
he's
love
the
him.
skeptic of
Yeah,
YouTube.
he's kind of a little bit like, oh yeah, Trump, I'd still vote for him.
That's a good dynamic to have on a podcast, though. As long as it's not manufactured, like fucking where Tucker had his bow tie to bring him back on CNN. What was that? Jon Stewart went on there and fucking.
Oh yeah.
Crossfire. Anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to deviate, but so yeah, your show, you have a guy that's he's really informed with the history and stuff. He's just not conspiratorial.
He's very good on his history points. I will give him that. But there's times
he's
where
like
I'm
my dad, basically.
Yeah.
My dad was a high school history teacher. I told him what Operation Northwoods was, and he never fucking heard of it. And I was like, how did they let you teach school?
Dude, it's like my pastor. We were driving one time, and he goes on like, oh, that's not true that they married off daughters at like 13, 14 years old. I'm like,
no, that was old.
That is what I'm saying. Dude, the life expectancy was like 40 years tops.
Yeah. You were getting them as young as 9 if you were like a good practicer or practitioner.
Yes. And I'm like, he claims to be a history guy. I'm like, no, you're not. I'm sorry. History is kind of sad, but at the same time, it's potent because then it helps you with giving your arguments, you know? I'm going to end with this read. Is that okay?
Sure, yeah.
All right. So, yeah, this is a bill that was going out by a lot of blacks that were trying to still, like, it was a voter handbill from 1880 of reasons why not to vote for the Democratic ticket. I am opposed to the Democratic Party, and I will tell you why. Every state that seceded from the United States was a Democratic state. Every ordinance of succession was that drawn by a Democrat. Every man that endeavored to tear the old flag from the heaven that is enriches was a Democrat. Every enemy this great republic has had for 20 years has been the Democrat. Every man that shot Union soldiers was a Democrat. Every man that starved Union soldiers and refused them the extremity of death was a death of crust was a Democrat. Every man that tried to destroy this nation was a Democrat. Every man that loved slavery better than liberty was a Democrat. The man that assassinated Abraham Lincoln was a Democrat. Every man that sympathized with the assassin, every man glad that the noblest president ever elected was assassinated, was a Democrat. Every man that impaired the credit of the United States, every man that swore he would never pay the bonds, every man that swore he would never redeem the greenbacks was a Democrat. Every man that resisted the draft was a Democrat. Every man that wept over the corpse of slavery was a Democrat. Every man that cursed Lincoln because he issued the Proclamation of Emancipation, the grandest paper since the Declaration of Independence, every one of them was a Democrat. Every man that wanted an uprising in the North, that wanted the release of rebel prisoners, that they might burn down the homes of the Union soldiers above the heads of their wives and children, while the brave husbands and heroic fathers were in the front fighting for honor of the old flag. Every one of them was a Democrat. Every man that believed this glorious nation of ours is only a confederacy. Every man that believed the old banner carried by our fathers through the Revolution, through the War of 1812, carried by our brothers over the plains of Mexico, carried by our brothers on the fields of rebellion, simply stood for a contract and stood for an agreement, was a Democrat. Every man who believed that any state could go out of the Union at its pleasure, every man that believed the grand fabric of the American government could be made to crumble instantly into dust at the touch of treason, was a Democrat. Soldiers, every scar you have as a heroic on your heroic bodies was given to you by a Democrat. Every scar, every arm that is lacking, every limb that is gone, every scar is a souvenir of a Democrat. What the Republican Party has not done, the Republicans have done some things that will be remembered as long as there is history. But there are some things they did not do. They did not use an army to force slavery into Kansas. They did not fire upon Fort Sumter. They did not attempt secession. They did not plunder the nation of its arms. They did not inaugurate rebellion. They did not drive American commerce from the seas. They did not huzzah over Union disasters. They did not huzzah over rebel victories. They did not mourn over rebel defeats. They did not oppose enlistments in the Union Army. They were not draft rioters. They were not Knights of the Golden Circle. They did not commit atrocities of Libby, Belly Island, Salisbury, or Andersonville. They did not oppose emancipation. They were not Ku Klux Klan. They did not commit the butchery at Fort Pillow. They did not commit the horrible massacre at New Orleans. They did not murder Dixon. They did not butcher Chisholm family. They did not massacre black men at Hamburg. They did not scourge and hang and shoot and murder men for opinion's sake. They did not organize Louisiana White League or South Carolina rifle clubs. They did not drench the South with the blood of inoffensive colored men. They did not invent the Mississippi Plan. They did not use tissue ballots. They did not moonshiners. They did not resist the national authority. They did not set up their states above the nation. They did not try to destroy the nation's credit. They did not try to pauperize the American mechanic. They did not have to implement the national growth. They did not have the hindrance of the people's prosperity. Can the Democratic Party of all Democrats say as much? The people can trust a party that has done these things, but they cannot trust a party that in whole or in part did not do them.
Sounds a little bit like Thomas Sowell way before he was born.
Dude, I'm reading this and I'm just like, we really have dumbed down our history to write all of that. Again, Republicans now, not so. But if I was back in the day, I would have been right behind Lincoln's side. I'm like, dude, I get what you're trying to stand for. I really do. One last trivia thing. In 1830s, there was an actually party movement, an anti-Masonic party.
Yeah. There was a third party.
Nobody talks about that.
Yeah, I think we actually, believe it or not, I don't know how, but I think we did bring that up on Skinwalker Ranch series because it tied into Mormonism. And I think maybe at that time when we were talking about Mormonism, we even mentioned there was an anti-Masonic party around then too.
Yes.
Very interesting. Yeah. Well, that was a lot, and I didn't know any of it.
I
it was all new to me, so that was holy shit.
Just some trivia. Watch it again. Maybe we'll research some of the books I mentioned.
Thank you for dropping the names of the books.
I hope you'll bring me on again when we talk about the Republicans. I wanna hear the other side of this, because
yeah. No, I was gonna say
he knows his shit.
We'll definitely have to do a part 2 with the Republican Party, and I'll set it up on a date where we could, all three of us can do this again. And then I'll just put them out back to back, so it'll be like a nice little, series there. So, thank you, Brandon. I appreciate all that information and everything you just gave us. Colby, thank you very much for jumping on and co-hosting with me. Would you like to plug your show again, Colby?
ConspiracyPlaytime.com or anywhere audio. Disinfobation everywhere, but Apple and YouTube, you can find that on Rumble as well. Both shows.
Nice.
Awesome. Very nice. And the links for that will be on the bottom for my side. And Brandon, would you like to plug your stuff as well? One more time.
You can find the Agora Podcast on Buzzsprouts, Google Play. I think you can find some of that in Google stores. We're still working on getting that out on more outlets, but you can usually find us, again, I think on Spotify, Amazon. You can follow me on Krollology 101. That's KROLLOLOGY. I think _101. That's usually where I start some of the ideas for podcasts. I'll do a post of like 10 slides, write an inscription, and then sometimes I'll be like, all right, we're getting some kickback here. This is an idea for a topic. So,
yeah, I will say I have
I'm
noticed.
going to be starting my own podcast. Sorry, I'm just going to be starting my own podcast called the Manna Daily Podcast. That's going to be on Rumble. It's going to be launching next month. When? Do not know just yet. But if you want to follow, it's Krollology 101 all together on Rumble. I haven't posted anything yet, so don't get freaked out. But that's where I'm going to be starting.
Hey, by the time this gets put out, maybe you will have.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. And I'm
going to come out faster on
like
Colby's end.
Hour 45 minutes installments of like history stuff, theology. Again, I argue it from a perspective that a lot of theologians get upset with me. They're like, that's heresy. And I'm like, well, no, it's history.
That makes me want to look at it even more.
Again, I appreciate the skeptics. I've said this to people before because the skeptics are the ones that are actually asking questions that the ministers are just going through every day. Me, I'm like, okay, try to understand it from his perspective. How would mythology connect to his perspective? How does the occult connect to your perspective? That's the kind of stuff I'm like, I got one guy, he messaged me, he says he bought a Bible based off of the stuff I've been posting, and he's actually become a believer based off of what I've talked about, because the stuff he's always had critiques with the church, I'm not afraid to bash. I'm agreeing with him. And he's like, I've never heard somebody do that before.
Yeah, you're converting
So-
people.
Well, apparently, and again, I'm not saying any denomination, but I'm just saying, just follow Christ. You don't need all this glam of the crap that the
Hey, I'm not a religious guy, but if you go by Christ's word, I can't argue with any of it.
Well, appreciate that.
Yeah, no,
There used to be
I
a reverence
totally
in the
agree as
country for
well.
that.
Yeah. It's people's interpretation that screws it up.
Yeah.
Especially
Like you were saying
Catholicism.
earlier, he was the guy to go into the religious settings and rise a ruckus. So it's the supreme irony that motherfucker has the biggest religion ever in his name. I don't know how he'd feel about that.
That's called the Whore of Babylon, aka Catholicism.
Ooh.
But Catholics are so mad at me about bringing this up. But this is what Martin Luther was going after. I could do it again. I'll be doing it on my show, and I'll shut up after this. But I basically traced all the religions, especially with Catholicism, because they merged with so many pagan faiths. I traced them all back to the Tower of Babel and Nimrod's family, Tammuz and Semiramis. I have their symbolism. I have their names and terminology. The very name, Mother Mary, she's known as the Queen of the Heavens. So is Semiramis, Nimrod's wife, and so was Ashtaroth in the Bible. So that's just a little trivia. She's the origins of the pentagram, and you can find that Sigil of Ashtaroth t-shirt on Amazon. She's the origins of the Christmas tree. I mean, I could go on all day. Easter, that's her too. Starbucks logo, that's her.
I just dropped an episode on that. You should check that one out. Mussolini. I mean, there's so many different names, but that I just that was last Saturday. Somebody came on and we touched on kind of the origin of the Starbucks logo. It's a female goddess, but I'm sure.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah, actually, you know what's we are doing a series. You might find it interesting about covering like occult symbolism inside your actual head, and we will actually kind of propose that the idea of Christmas is coming from your eyeballs. So I mean, that's a real deep way to look at it.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Like understanding the true. I'm going to be doing a series with Good Lion Films on the origins of holidays, so I'm going to be touching on stuff.
Nice. Good for you, man. Great shit. Great stuff. Maybe by the time this comes out, because this might be on hold for like a month or so, depending if Colby puts it out. Maybe all your stuff will already, started by then. So definitely go check all that stuff out. I'll have all his links in the bottom. Thank you again, Brandon, for coming on. Oh, what I did want to say is when you were, plugging your Instagram, it's funny how since I've started messaging you, now I see you. I guess you weren't in the algorithm as often. So now I do see like a lot of your stuff, and I will say you have some in-depth posts, and I do
Appreciate
find that
that.
impressive.
Thank you.
So not
Are
too
you
many
on Twitter
people
at
do
all?
that. So
No, I couldn't get on that, especially now with Musk wanting to make it into
Ooh,
WeChat America.
he's an
Thank you.
anti-Musker. Nice.
Oh yeah, don't even get me
fuck,
started.
I can't.
I think it's funny how it's like everybody I get on is on Instagram and not Twitter, and he's like, I have no way to talk to him now.
I gotta get a Twitter because fuck, it's everybody that's cool's over there.
Yeah.
Or no, an Instagram. Sorry,
Yeah.
I'm on Twitter and there's nothing but fucking shit talking there. So
Yeah, I couldn't get onto that, dude. Even the TikTok thing, I was like, you mean cuckoo?
no, I can't do the TikTok.
So stupid.
Yeah.
The best I would do is like maybe an advertisement. That's it. I like just look it up here. But I would not like crazy dancing. I don't get it. Sorry, I'm going on a tangent again.
It's all right. It's okay. But thank you very much, like I said, Brandon, for coming on and hitting us with all of that. And we will have you back for the Republican Party. And that'll be all three of us again as well. Colby, like I said, thank you for jumping on and co-hosting with me. That's what's up. That's
Colby, if you want to message me on Instagram on your show for the March
I
thing,
got your email. So
you do, right? That's right.
Yeah.
Okay,
That's true.
Okay.
That's right. So now another reason Colby doesn't need Instagram. He has his email.
Go old school. We're going old school on it.
I'm all for you not joining Instagram, actually, Colby.
Oh yeah. Through you,
I want to
I've
help
gotten
your
contact
sanity.
with
I want to help your
Cosmic
sanity.
Peach, and now this young lad who's
It's
also,
tempting. It's tempting. Yeah.
valuable resource. So
hear
I'll just use you when I want to connect with someone on Instagram.
Sounds good. Thank you both very much, and that is the end of another NY Patriot episode. Until the next one, everybody be well. Later.